American Federation for Children, which is the nation's largest school choice group. Prior to that, when I was a kid, I was the chief of staff to Governor Tommy Thompson when the nation's first private school choice program was created. The next year, we created the second charter school law in the country. I went on to serve for 14 years in the legislature, including 3 terms as speaker. So I've sat on that side of the table and listened to people here. I've always found that the testimony of parents and students is the most compelling, and the testimony of lobbyists is questionable. So I'd like to begin.
What state was that?
Wisconsin. So I'd like to begin with some testimony that Representative Tolson Reich just heard not long ago from the School Boards Association attorney, who told you will never know how those kids are doing in those schools, the kids on the education savings accounts. So one of the things I used to like to do when I was in the legislature was to read the bills, which is apparently an impediment for some people. If you take a look at page 3 of this bill, you will see that everyone participating in the Education Savings Account program has to take either the state achievement test or nationally norm reference test in the areas of math, English, language arts, and the information has to be provided on a value-added assessment. Who does it get provided to? It gets provided to the state treasurer on an annual basis. The state treasurer then will report information aggregated by grade level, gender, family income, and race about how the students are doing in the program. They will also be required to provide rates of high school graduation. You heard that wasn't true. You'll never know if they're graduating from high school. It's right in the law. So you'll know that they're graduating from high school. Did they attend college? Did they go on and graduate from college? It's right in the law. In fact, this thing is just filled with all sorts of accountability measures, and you were told there's no accountability in here. If you go on, you can see in the bill that there's a parental satisfaction survey. Not every public school is required to do a parental satisfaction survey and then report the results of what parents thought about the education that their children are receiving. But the kids on the education savings account, that information has to be provided to the treasurer, and the treasurer will report to you annually with that information. It goes on and on and on with all sorts of accountability measures in this thing. There's financial accountability. You heard about fraud today. This allows for audits. It allows for prosecution. It allows for people to be banned from the program. That isn't necessarily the case for other types of schools. You heard lots of things today that were not true. And all people had to do was actually to read the bill. And they would have seen that what you heard from the education establishment is not true. You heard stuff last week that wasn't true either. I watched you last week on television. So Representative Mackey said something, and I about fell out of my chair at home. He said to all of you quite confidently, there is no education savings account program in the country as big as the one being proposed here. Yeah, except that the one in Arizona 2 years ago was $107 million. The one in Florida 2 years ago was $147,822,000. There are programs that are bigger than this. I don't know why people feel compelled to tell you things that aren't true about the legislation, except that what you've seen here today is not just a clash of facts from different sides, but you've seen a clash of philosophies, of educational thinking. And so the establishment has been here all day defending one view, clinging to it, hoping you'll just keep sending more money to that old view, and somehow they'll get better results if you just keep sending them more money. But if you look at what your parents were telling you today, they were giving you a different educational philosophy, and they're the ones on the right track. You heard one size does not fit all, that different children learn differently. All of us who have kids know that. I've got 3 kids, and they're remarkably different in the way they learn. So why would they all necessarily be given the opportunity to learn their best way at their local school? You should be able to send your kid to the school that makes the most sense for the way that they learn. Secondly, we heard a lot about money. But to me, after my time in the legislature, I concluded that public education was an investment in the child's future. It was not an investment in any institution. It was not an investment in government. It was supposed to be, that's the reason you raise all this money and you vote for taxes. It's an investment in the child's future. You want them to be able to reach their potential. So why would you trap them in a system where they have a limited range of choices because you want to save the institution? And then the last thing is accountability. You heard it again and again today, and yet they were measuring accountability by inputs. Again and again, it was all about inputs, certifications, number of teachers, dollars into the system. But the right way to measure accountability is by outcomes. That's what you should be doing, investing on behalf of the taxpayers, is getting the biggest return for your dollars. So in my home state, we have now had school choice for 30 years, almost 31. And so for me, I hear these arguments, I'm like going, man, I heard that in the 90s when we passed this stuff. And people are still peddling this, even though there's been study after study after study that shows it's not true. It took us a while because we were first, and so you're sort of stumbling, trying to find a way to build a new system that meets these principles we talked about. But we created one accountability system that fit across everybody, but it wasn't regulating private schools and charter schools and public schools with the same rules and regulations and requirements, because if you do that, they all end up the same, right? You'll have no variety. What we did was we regulated the outcomes, essentially. We required transparency. So you can go on the website in Wisconsin, or even now on our app, a parent can go on our app and say, type in their address and ask about all the public schools, the charter schools, and the private schools that accept state assistance for students, state scholarships, and you can find out what their scores are. You can find out all sorts of things about them. You can compare what all the outcomes are from one school to another, what their teaching style is, so if it's right for your child or not right for your child. That's where we're going. That's what accountability is, when parents are empowered with the resources and the information to make the right choices for their kids to maximize their potential. That's the future. What you heard today was the gasping of the past.